his ways, going to Hollywood, he's busting into Hollywood. Show him the ways, moving to Hollywood, he's hopping into Hollywood. He's on his way.
Welcome to another edition of Hollywood Hoops. This is Eric Pincus of Basketball Insiders and Bleacher Report, sitting with Josh Martin of Bleacher Report and Clippers.com. And together we are Hollywood Hoops. And Josh, you have arranged for a special guest today. So we have a few issues before we get to that, but I just want to touch on Blake Griffin via Danilo Gallinari, right? Breaking his hand on someone's face. That happened. We'll get into it. Mm-hmm. The Lakers made a couple of moves. They signed some guys. Vanderbilt probably gets a shot. We're going to touch on a bit of all that, Lakers and Clippers, and a bit of maybe even Yu Darvish, which, you know, as much as we could talk about hoops, there's no hoops in baseball, but we could pretend for a minute. But who is our special guest?
So today we have on Chaniel Smiley. She is the commissioner of the Drew League. Her father, Dino Smiley, was the commissioner for 30-plus years. And as we get into in the conversation, she was essentially the Adam Silver of the Drew League to her dad's David Stern, where she was essentially running a lot of the operations for a number of years until before she officially took over control. Now she's the head of it. She's probably, as far as I know, the only female commissioner of a male sports league anywhere. So she's in a very unique position there. She's seen a lot of great basketball, and she's really seen up close what the Drew has become from being sort of a local neighborhood phenomenon to really something that has become national, international, however you want to put it, is in terms of the basketball world. So, of course, it's been a really interesting time for the Drew. They had Chris Paul and James Harden playing together on Sunday, giving folks a preview of what the Houston Rockets might look like, which was, they had a little bit up and down from what I saw, that Chris had some issues finding his shot in the first half, but he got it going in the second half, and they had to figure out some chemistry, like a little bit of dueling
it's going to take
banjos.
more than a little bit of time in the Drew League for this. I do think they will figure it out, but I think it's going to take about a month or two for the Rockets to kind of figure out who they are and how to get such dominant ball guys, Chris Paul and James Harden. But it's great that when they get an opportunity to show the world at least a glimpse, it's at the Drew League. It's become sort of an institution outside of the NBA official summer leagues. I mean, is there a better summer league anywhere in the world, basketball summer league anywhere than at the Drew League?
I would say no, but I think some folks.
Yeah, I know Jamal Crawford might not agree.
Jamal Crawford might not agree. He's got his Seattle Pro-Am, which he calls now the Crossover, up in Seattle. They've got the Goodman League over in D.C., Rucker League.
But this is Hollywood Hoops, so
right.
As far as we're concerned, this is the best one.
Yes, and as far as the ones on the East Coast are outdoor leagues. So as far as indoor leagues that play by NBA rules, I think you could very well argue that the Drew League is the best, not just because of the NBA guys who play there, but you have guys who play overseas who play here during the summer, guys from the G League, guys who haven't yet started in college, but some of the top high school players from around LA will play in the Drew League. So it's a tremendous organization, a really great league. I've been down there a number of times to watch some ball. Eric, we got to get you down there at some point soon.
We're going to do it. I look forward to it. Maybe one of these playoff games that they have coming up this next week. So, well, Josh, let's go right ahead. We recorded this. This is, of course, on Monday. Usually we record on Wednesday, right?
I guess it shifts around.
I've lost track. But we had the opportunity to get Chaniel today, and we weren't going to pass it up. And so we're going to go ahead and roll the conversation, which took place just a few moments ago.
Chaniel, thanks for joining us. So is this your first season officially as the Drew League commissioner? Is that right?
That's correct.
Yeah. How have things sort of changed for you this season compared to previous seasons? It's my understanding that your role under your dad, Dino Smiley, previously was sort of like what Adam Silver was in the years leading up to David Stern's retirement, where Adam was really running a lot of it behind the scenes, but David was still sort of the titular head. So how sort of have things changed for you in your role since you have assumed that full mantle?
Yeah, so that's a great way to put it, Adam and David. And that's exactly what I would compare it to. The 4 years behind my dad, along his side, in that way. In that way for many years since I graduated from college, and I came back, and I knew that my dad needed assistance because he was getting really drained and tired, and I felt like it was time for me to really step up and be there for him. And when he decided to pass the torch, so to say, I had no problem with that, and I know it's huge shoes to fill because he's done a great job being a commissioner for over 30 years, and I knew I would be the perfect candidate for that. He will always be, on my side, and to this day I still ask him for advice and suggestions. So he'll always be there supporting me. But as far as my position, I would say I'm still doing what I was doing 4 or 5 years ago. It's just more so of the title, and because getting a little older and things are just starting to change, I was taking those heavy roles a few years ago. So now that I'm the official commissioner, it's just more so of the title. But I am doing more the outside interviews and making more of a decision making, and he's trusting me in that sense to make those decisions when it comes down to the operation aspects of it.
Chaniel, thank you for coming on Hollywood Hoops. This is Eric Pincus, and I just wanted to ask, how did the Drew League grow from where it was, which was, a small alternative league that was, the summer league basically, to being such a huge thing? I mean, you guys had, James Harden and Chris Paul the other night. NBA players love to play in your league. How did it grow to be such a force?
Yeah, so it grew, I would say, the pivotal year when it got to where it is right now was the lockout. Everybody know about the infamous lockout in 2011. It was such a unique year for summer basketball, and we were just put in the right position at the right time when it happened. We just became the face, and that's when we, with the Goodman DC squad against Michael Beasley and Kevin Durant. And when we played that game out there with them is when we really was put on the map, I would say. But it did start off with only back in the 70s, and it was just a small group of teams and coaches within the community. And now where it's at today is just monumental. The fact that we're able to accomplish something like that is it's pretty awesome.
Now, Chaniel, I know you've been around the Drew, I would assume most, if not all, of your life by now. What are some of your earliest memories of being at the Drew and around the Drew and the league as a whole from your younger years on?
It's crazy because when people ask that question, or if they ask about something that I recall from the past, I just remember being in the gym, spending my summer vacation in the gym as a student. As a little girl, just being up under my mom because she would always help my dad with the snack bar. What she's doing today, that's what she was doing 20 years ago, still in the snack bar. So I just used to remember being up under her and helping her out with the drinks and the sodas and going to the store, being there early mornings, late days on the weekend. We never really took a family summer vacation. We were always in the gym. So that was definitely a memory I always have for summer. When I think of summer, I think of Drew, and that's just and it's a family, the Ware family. We basically grew up together, and we're still a family to this day. So that's probably my fond memory of Drew. It's just as a little girl being there with my parents at a very young age, watching great basketball.
Is that part of why you've taken on this mantle and why you stayed with the family business? It's been something that it's just been a part of your life for so long that you just had to keep making sure it stayed strong?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's only right that that it continues on within the family. And it's not too many businesses that last this long where the family is still intact. And because we're in a position where the family is still our foundation, and we value that very much, and we work hard together, and work well with each other. And of course, we butt heads. Of course, all family do when you're dealing with business. But I think we have something special. I didn't really see this coming, but where it is today, I think it's only right that it stays in the family. And who else better than do it besides someone that has been there since they can remember.
Mm-hmm. Now, obviously, you've been with this a long time, Chaniel, but when you look at this summer's season and the way things have gone, how would you assess sort of the turnout and the attention and the excitement that you've seen around the Drew this year as opposed to years past?
From 2 years, yes. I was thinking about that yesterday after that intense matchup. Just the crowd, it was special for the community, and I was reflecting on that, trying to figure out when was another date. I remember when we had this much attention, and I would probably say it was probably 2015 when John Wall came, and it was a championship game with Game and his team, and I think that was a huge event as well. But this one right here, just to have someone like CP3 come out and James, and that was just a dual matchup that everybody was excited for, really put us over the edge, and just the media that covered the game and people from all over. You know, we were getting calls from when those media posts started coming out. We were getting people from Arizona, Utah. They were saying that they were driving down, 7 hours, and they were going to wait as long as they had to get in. And that means so much for the community and for our fans in a whole.
Is networking and reaching out to get someone like, I guess, to build the relationships where Chris Paul and his people, or James, or all the NBA athletes, is part of your job as commissioner, just spend a lot of your time networking and making sure that these channels are there so that when the time comes that they're going to come, and when they come to LA and when they're going to play in the Drew League?
Yeah, I think we never, it's pretty unique. We've never, as a league itself, we've never advertised our league to where we'll call up a player and say, hey, when you get in town, you're going to play. It's more, it comes natural. And I think that's the uniqueness about it, because people just, like a DeMar DeRozan or Nick Young or James Harden, who been playing in the Drew since they've been in high school, when they can vouch for it and tell their teammates, like, hey, when you get out here, you definitely have to come on my team, or you got to check it out. The players itself are the ones that are making this happen. So I wouldn't give us just all the credit, but they definitely play a big part in getting these guys down here. So we just kind of sit back and just enjoy it. And I think that's why the players like James and DeMar, who's been coming here since they were 15 years old, they come back and they give back to the community, and then this is what they love to do every summer. They look forward to it. And that's how I knew we had something special. If you keep coming back, then hey, this might last another 40 years. You never know.
You can only hope so, Chaniel. But I had heard that there were lines around the block at King Drew yesterday for that James and CP3 game at like 8 a.m., something like that. And maybe part of that was also because the rumor was that Russell Westbrook was also going to turn out. Turns out he was at Disneyland for the day with his family, as he revealed on Snapchat. Were there any expectations on your part or on the part of folks at the Drew that Russell would be a part of that game or that day as well, or was that sort of a surprise to you too?
Well, I had got word following week that he was coming and he wanted to play from his coach, and we scheduled that. It was already going to happen, the matchup between hometown favorites and LA. We wasn't going to change the schedule anyway, but we were just going to change the time frame to make sure that he was able to come. So we know the fact that Russell never really plays in summer leagues, or you only see him on either working out or he's in season. So we thought, like, okay, well, he has a connection with his high school coach. is the coach for hometown favorites. So we thought it would be that would be his way of actually playing this summer. And when I found out that he wasn't going to play was that morning, because of, I guess he said that he had a soreness in his knee and he didn't want to chance it. But we were for me, I was a little taken back, but I wasn't surprised. I was just hoping that he came. We were expecting him to come because the entire week they said he was coming. And then so the day of, for him to make that decision, I understand why he didn't want to risk it, but he had the whole city behind him, and I was just hoping that he did something special for the community, for the city. Having a MVP LA is huge, and I just thought it was perfect timing for him to actually make that appearance and come down. And it just disappointed a lot of people, but overall, I think they still put on a great show with CP3 there and James, and it was still a great game. And it just happens. That was his decision.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure that happens fairly often with some of these guys. They'll come through and say one thing, and maybe something goes another way. But correct me if I'm wrong, Chaniel, but this means that when the playoffs start for the Drew, which I believe is this coming weekend, that Chris Paul will be eligible, but Russell Westbrook would not be eligible if he were to come out and play. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. That's right.
So you have set. I don't know enough. I got to get down and really study what you guys do, because it sounds like you guys run a very structured organization. I think that's been part of why it's been successful. So what is the rule there, that you have to participate during the regular season to be eligible for playoffs?
Yes, that's correct. So you have to play at least one regular season game to be eligible for playoffs. If your team goes to the playoffs, then great, then you're eligible. But since he didn't play, yesterday was the last regular season game. Since he didn't play, he can't come Friday, Saturday, or Sunday to jump onto one's team at the last minute.
All right. Well, he can come, and he can still come. Russ, come on, come to the game, check it out. Just be in the stands, wear one of your funky outfits. He's very stylish. Do your thing, but you don't have to play. And what I find it fascinating that to see how such a unique business has kind of grown from just a small event over at a high school into something that is really kind of part of the NBA establishment at this point. What's your favorite part of being commissioner, or not even as commissioner, just being a part of the Drew League?
My favorite part, just to be a part of something that is positive, to be a part of something where I know that the community respects and acknowledge and look forward to happen every summer. And we don't charge $1. I also look forward to giving these scholarships, the money that we do raise, the scholarships to the kids in the inner city who are going to college. And just to see that there's so many people that support what we're doing, and it's a safe haven for those kids growing up. And the fact that we can touch so many lives through basketball is really special. And, now we're dealing with the younger kids, the junior Drew, and just knowing that we could touch so many kids' lives just during the summer, that means a lot. So that's my proudest moments about being a part of this program. Now,
I have to ask, because I have 3 daughters. Did you play at all in your youth? Were you ever on the court, a regular? Or
I played all the way up into high school. I actually went to King Drew High School. I graduated there.
Gotcha. Because I have 3 daughters. They all play, and so we're gonna have to get them on over to the Drew, take them down there, see if we can't get them in the junior Drew. Is it co-ed, or are there boys teams, girl teams, or is it just boys teams?
Yeah, the junior Drew is co-ed. Yeah, so we have that age group is ages 10 to 12, and then we just started our first annual youth camp that went on for 5 weeks. This is our last week this coming up weekend. And that age group is from 13 to 17.
Gotcha. All right. We're going to have to pencil this in for next year. Absolutely.
Of course. Now, Chaniel, we have coming up this week, you guys at the Drew have a rematch with the Seattle Pro-Am, the crossover, which it's called now. 2 years ago, you guys played up in Seattle, and unfortunately on foreign turf, I believe you guys took a loss in that one. Is that right?
Yeah, we did, unfortunately.
It happens. Someone's got to win, someone's got to lose. But how are you guys feeling going into this week's event? I know it wasn't able to go off last year, but what's sort of the feeling heading in now to Wednesday's game at LA Southwest College?
The guys are pumped. They're excited. They're like, this is a rematch game. We got to get these guys out of here. They're taking it serious, and they're happy to be a part of it. When we went out there in Seattle, we were shorthanded. A lot of our guys could make it at the last minute, and those are situations that are just out of my hands. If they have to go work, if they got a training camp to go to, then they got to do what they have to do. Unfortunately, we were shorthanded going up there, and we lost. I think we lost by 9, and that atmosphere was amazing. I think the whole city of Seattle came out, and it was thousands of people who couldn't even get inside. So now, 2 years fast forward, we're here at Southwest this Wednesday, and we expect it to be the same energy. It's payback. So a lot of trash talking been going on and stuff. I don't know as far as what they have, I can't even really be worried about it. I know a couple of their key guys are injured, so they won't be here, but they're still going to come and support. And at this point, whether it's NBA, non-NBA, this is LA versus the best LA versus the best of Seattle. And I think it's going to definitely be a good grudge match regardless of who's on the court.
Yeah, go get them.
I hope so. Now,
thank you.
Now, Chaniel, do you know, have anyone confirmed, at least for the Drew side, that's going to be playing in that game on Wednesday?
Yeah, I have some guys. Unfortunately, we can't promote the players because of just sanction rules. So that's why you haven't seen any posters or flyers or information about who's actually playing.
Right.
That's something from our social handles we can't publicize. But yeah, we have a confirm of I think we have 3 or 4 NBA guys. I have to look at the list again. And then the rest are overseas non-NBA players. But yeah, they're definitely, everybody there that's going to be playing have been a part of the Drew League for plenty years. So they're definitely going to go out there and make sure we get this win.
Do we know if Baron Davis will be making at least a celebrity appearance, I guess we could say? I know he's a huge figure around the Drew. What's sort of his role nowadays, now that he's a couple years, at least a few years removed here now from actually his playing days in the NBA?
Mm-hmm. Baron is just they will call the OG of LA basketball. He's just Father Time is kind of catching up to him, and but everybody has love and respect for him, and they look up to him as one of the top 4 or 5 guards in LA to ever come out.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's doing a lot of things in the film industry and creating his brand with his Black Santa and his he did our documentary. So he's doing a lot of film work, and he's keeping himself busy with that. So he'll be there. I don't know if he's going to actually play or get in, because we have some other guys that's on the roster who will definitely be getting more minutes. And he's fine with that. He just wants to be a part of it and cheer us on. So,
what sort of response did you guys get from fans and just casual, I guess, observers after that Drew League doc went out on Showtime? And what sort of response did you really see?
When that came out, the response was all love. I didn't see any negative posts. I didn't see anybody bashing or anybody saying anything negative about it at all. Every comment or any post that I saw, or every phone call, every text, every letter was all positive. And what I noticed as well, people was just saying, "Oh, I had no idea. You guys almost lost the league," or "I had no idea you guys were struggling trying to figure out how to get a sponsor or how to keep this thing going. I had no idea you guys have been doing this for this long, and that these NBA players have been playing since they were in high school. So that the documentary just elevated the league even more, because now people wanted to know more about it and they want to just be a part of the culture. So they were making moves to come down and just wherever they were coming from vacation or whatnot, they were making sure they stopped by just to have that, on their calendar to say, hey, I went to the Drew, this weekend. I checked it out. I saw it on Showtime and I'm here, so it definitely exposed us even more. And I'm glad Dan was able to make that happen for us.
I'm glad he was able to keep that in the community. Barron, I've known him a long time covering the Clippers, and he's such a charismatic guy. I'm glad that he's taken. I think a lot of the NBA guys take a lot of pride in the Drew League, and I think that's really a special thing. So I really am happy for your success, and I'm excited to see where you take it moving forward as the commissioner.
Thank you. I'm excited. So
now, Chaniel, I wonder, just from a wider lens here, what, if anything, does it mean to you to be sort of a female commissioner of a league that is almost entirely, if not actually entirely, comprised of men as far as who we see out there playing on the court?
Mm-hmm. It could be challenging just because I am young and I am a female, so it's going to take some time for guys to actually respect that. And I think I won't have too big of a challenge with the guys who are familiar with me or seen me grown in the league. They know me already, so they expect they know what to expect of that. But it's more so just the group of guys who are new, who are coming up, that can kind of be taken back by it just because of female empower. It's just it kind of throws them off a little bit, and it could be a little challenging with that. But I have no problem stepping up to the plate or making any decisions that need to be done. I make sure that my emotions and everything is out the way, because of those type of antics. I hear all kind of different things about that, and I just stay strong and follow through what I know is best. And it's interesting to know that as a female, to be in this position, I don't think there's any other female commissioners. And that's why I really look up to someone like Jeannie Buss. I really want to meet her just to have a girl talk about just being empowered and to feed off of her energy and get advice from her. I really love to meet her one day. But right now,
I'll have to try to hook that up. I'll have to try to hook you up. I don't. I know Jeannie. I don't know if I know her well enough to say, like, hey, Jeannie, come on over. But I do know Jeannie. So if there's an opportunity, I will definitely put that forward.
Now, Chaniel, I wonder, just as we wind down here a little bit, what's sort of your vision for the Drew going forward? Now that you're young, you're at the top of the league here. I imagine you would like to be heavily involved for a long time. What do you see as sort of the future for the Drew? Where do you see it going? And what sort of, I guess, plans do you have for the future, as far as you can sort of hint towards them right now?
Mm-hmm. Well, right now, I think it's a steady pace right now. As far as the future, I definitely want to get more involved in overseas, international. We did some things over in China and Japan a couple years ago, but I want to expand on that a little bit more and see where we can go with that. You know, we've had talks with maybe possibly doing a league in China, in Japan, with the Drew League stamp on it. Definitely want to get a little younger and expand on the youth leagues and stuff like that. So right now, I look at it going global and seeing how we can grow from there.
Mm-hmm. As far as the upcoming playoffs now, is there anything you can do to handicap for our fans what to expect? when they come down to King Drew, what they'll see. Because I know that obviously there's, like in the NBA, there's a little bit more intensity that ratchets up once you get to the playoffs from the regular season. Who are some of the favorites, I guess we should say, going into this year's playoffs, team-wise, that folks should be on the lookout for?
It's really hard to tell right now. I mean, Birdie's Revenge is undefeated, and they're a team where a lot of people doubted them and say, oh, well, they haven't played anybody. They're not that strong like you think. But they've proven to everybody that they're a team to look out for and to take serious. So I would say to definitely look out for Birdies, and a team like MHP that is just filled with superstars on the team. They're mainly all pros, the starting five. If Nick Young keeps that roster consistent, that's going to be the team that everybody's going to fear.
And as far as players, Chaniel, I know obviously folks will be on the lookout for all the NBA talent, guys that they'll recognize from that end, but who are some of like the standouts that you've seen, at least from this season, who are guys that maybe folks wouldn't know about unless they had come down to the Drew and really gotten to watch them play?
Some guys that stood out, I would say Frank Sessions. Everybody is looking at him right now. Who else people come out to see? Antonio Bigelow. Those two, Casper Ware. And who else? A team of mine that I'm also a favorite of fan of is the Closures. So a lot of people like to come and see the young boys come out there and show their talent among men.
For sure. Well, look, Chaniel, it's an exciting time. You guys got a lot of great things going on. I'm sure you're super busy. We really appreciate you coming on and joining us on Hollywood Hoops. And I'll be sure to get Eric down there to check out some Drew League hoops.
And I'll bring Jeannie with me. No, I'll get Jeannie on the phone. But seriously, thank you for taking the time. It's really a great story about how a local community has really, for so long, and has grown into something that is really an institution now. So congrats to your success, and I look forward to more.
Thank you. Appreciate it, guys.
All right, there you have it. That is Chaniel Smiley, the commissioner of the Drew League. And it's really a fantastic, and I'm speaking not from experience, but from reputation. And Josh, you can speak from experience, but that it is a great basketball. If you need your basketball fix and it's off season, and now Summer League in Las Vegas is done, and you've driven back from Vegas and you're itching for basketball, this is where you got to go. Not a lot of time left. If you want to go see the playoff games, check it out. It's over at the Drew, which is
at King Drew. I believe it's the middle school, one of the two down in Watts. They have a gym down there. You can look it up on their website, drewleague.com. They're also on Twitter at Drew League, DREWLEAGUE. It really is a great institution, something that's been around over 40 years now. I remember one of the times I went down for a game there. There were some NBA guys playing, but in the middle of the game, Kobe and his wife, Vanessa, walked into the building, and everyone was just going nuts because obviously Kobe is a legend. At that point, he was still rehabbing from his injury, but he's played in the league. Well, they created I think it was back in 2011 or 2012, he wanted to play, but he wasn't eligible for playoffs, so they just set up a whole separate all-star game for him, and he and James Harden went head-to-head, and James had like 50 points. Kobe hit the game winner. LeBron has played in the league. Kevin Durant's played in the league. Sure. James Harden is a regular. And
regulars, certainly Nick Young. Metta World Peace has been playing in it, right? DeMar DeRozan. And, of course, Baron Davis. We should talk about Baron. Baron's sort of like the mayor of the Drew League almost.
He's absolutely. He is definitely the mayor down there. He was one of the original, not one of the original, but one of the bigger NBA guys who really worked hard to make it a big thing. And he had great connections and relationships with the top players coming out of his neighborhood. Guys like James Harden, for instance, who has become a regular. Guys like DeMar DeRozan and Brandon Jennings, Amir Johnson, all these guys who have since become, not just Drew League regulars, but really successful professional players, NBA players. In Brandon's case now, a CBA, Chinese Basketball Association player, we'll see. So it really is a great time. and now they have air conditioning in the gym, so it's that much better of an experience.
Well, so I guess this would be the litmus test on whether Paul George is actually from L.A. or not, right? Because we've debated this, and there's the whole Palmdale thing. I don't think he's been a Drew League regular. Palmdale is way out.
No, I as far as I know, I don't think Paul George has played in the Drew.
Yeah, so
folks out there
put that in
can
the
correct
column
me.
of the not L.A. for those who say he's not from L.A. Put the Drew League in the not L.A. for Paul George column.
Yeah, but then again, like Russell Westbrook also has not played in the Drew, so
But he's been there, or at least he was. Well,
he was supposed to be there.
Right.
Which I thought was interesting hearing from Chaniel how they sort of expected him and thought he was going to come. But that's just sort of how it goes. Because for these guys, in some cases, I think it's not as much about playing basketball. It's sort of also a promotional appearance, I guess you would say. And with NBA players, it can be sort of hit or miss with those situations. So I don't know that I saw one of my friends sent me over a thing, a compilation of videos that Russell had put out on Snapchat from Sunday. He was out at Disneyland with like his wife and I think his brother and some other friends and family. So,
well, if you have a sore knee, you could still go to Disneyland.
Absolutely,
so,
you must be this tall and this healthy to ride the rides, right? So,
well, I'm glad that we got and of course, as the father of daughters, I always like to see a woman in a position of power because there's no reason why they shouldn't, and it doesn't make any sense to me, and at least that's what we're teaching our young ladies, that you go after something that you believe in and be what you want to be. Doesn't matter what your background is or anything, as long as you work hard and put in quality work. So
absolutely,
it's inspiring, and I obviously don't have Jeannie Buss on speed dial. I'm not going to pretend I do, but I have had the opportunity for many, many years to at least have conversations with her, and she's a very friendly person. And I'm sure if I pointed out the situation and said that she would, as you know, like some level of mentorship from one of the most powerful women in basketball, and Chaniel is one of the more powerful women in basketball, which is pretty impressive. There's no reason why those two shouldn't have a conversation. So I can't promise anything, but I will certainly make sure at some point that conversation happens with
Absolutely.
Jeannie.
And at the very least, it would be a good opportunity for Jeannie to come down and see what Julius Randle's looking like these days.
Oh, that's right. Julius has been playing in the
Yeah, he's been playing on MHP, Most Hated Players, which is also Nick Young's team. So even though their connection as teammates in the NBA is no longer, with Nick going up to Oakland to play for the Golden State Warriors, they've still maintained that here in the Drew, and that team is expected to be one of the favorites through this year's playoffs, and they'll be represented pretty well at or should be represented pretty well at the game on Wednesday.
I'm sure Nick
between the Drew and the crossover.
Nick loves the Drew, so he's great. And speaking about Julius Randle, I guess it's probably a good transition point with the 15 or so minutes that we've got left to kind of start to transition. We'll talk first about a little bit about the Lakers, and then we'll get into the Gallinari, the Danilo issue. But when you talk about the Lakers, this is a big year for Julius because he's in the last year of his contract, and he will be a restricted free agent next summer. Now, when it comes to being a restricted free agent, he will take up $12.4 million of the Lakers' salary cap. So even unsigned, they have his rights, but he takes up a certain amount of their space unsigned. So they can sign him for, say, $25 million. Let's say he has this brilliant season, and it's, oh my gosh, this guy is really broken through. They can pay him about $25 million, but his number will be 12.4 before they sign him. So, and I'm not saying they will sign him for that. I'm just saying that in their pursuit of these superstars, which is something that Rob Pelinka and Magic Johnson have discussed, and I've got something pending at Bleacher Report that by the time you hear this, listener, it may already be up, that the Lakers, if they want to go after two stars, are going to have a difficult time keeping any or all or some, any combination, depends, of Julius Randle, Jordan Clarkson, Luol Deng, who they would like to get out of, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, and Brook Lopez. So they can get a LeBron and, say, a Paul George or a Russell Westbrook and a DeMarcus Cousins, some combination of those four players, DeMarcus, Russell Westbrook, LeBron, Paul George, two of those four. But to do so probably costs them all those other players, unless they can get rid of Luol Deng, and then they can probably keep one of those guys. And so Julius Randle could be one of those players, depending on how the fit works and depending on how well he plays. So where are you on, of those players that I've named? Let's say the Lakers can get Paul George and they can get LeBron James. Who do you think is the most important player out of Clarkson, Randall, I'm not going to say Deng, KCP, and Lopez? Who do you think is the most important fit moving forward?
Well, that's tough because I think Randall long-term might be the most talented of those guys as far as the upside he can bring to the roster. But when you're looking at a team with LeBron, who is basically a 4, Paul George, who would play a lot of 4 and has played some 4 in the past, Brandon Ingram's a guy you're looking at to play 3 and 4. And even you got Larry Nance, Kyle Kuzma, also guys who play 4-5, then that sort of knocks him out. It almost makes you think that Jordan Clarkson could potentially be the most important of those guys to keep around, but I'm not sure that talent-wise and skill-wise he would be the best. So I guess to me it comes down to really Brook Lopez, and he could be sort of an interesting player for them. I know you might say KCP, and I would imagine that may or may not be your answer, but I'm not going to speculate too much. But with Brook...
Well, there's a reason for it.
Sure, but with Brook, at the very least, just in terms of pure basketball, the business aspect of it aside, he's a guy who's a legit 5. He can protect the rim pretty well. He can shoot the ball well now. He's got skill. He's great in the locker room. And I think as much as the NBA game has de-emphasized the importance of having big guys in general and having centers in particular, I think his skill set and his ability to just score at that position could be tremendously valuable, especially if you're building a team around a guy like Lonzo Ball, who needs to have guys around him who can put the ball in the basket.
Right, and if you argue that you've got a point guard, you've got a center, and say 3 wings, some would argue that at this point you don't even need the center. It's 4 wings. It's like a center and 4 wings, and you just play 5 out. But if you do subscribe to the notion that there's value in having a true 7-footer, because even the Warriors, right, in their run, they've had Andrew Bogut, and then they've had Zaza Pachulia, and even JaVale McGee, and they're bringing those guys back. So there is some value there. But, yeah, the argument there is it's a tricky one. Unless Julius Randle can play center, and defensively he hasn't shown that ability. But you can argue it. He is someone who's mobile enough to stay with guards, and as opposed to being like a traditional shot blocking center.
Sure.
He's someone who can switch onto guards, and we've seen flashes of it. Larry Nance, same thing. But if you've got Lonzo Ball and you've got something like Paul George, Brandon Ingram, and LeBron James, and Brook Lopez, I mean, that's a really credible. That's a potentially championship-winning starting 5, assuming that Lonzo Ball is really the real deal, assuming that Brandon Ingram's the real deal, everyone's healthy. But you can also argue that the center position isn't as important, and then this kind of goes to what your suggestion was about what I might be thinking. It's not as much what KCP can do for you; it's as much as what they can do for Rich Paul.
Right.
It's the agent tie, and we've talked about this at length with Paul George and Julius Randle and D'Angelo Russell. That under the same umbrella, under Aaron Mintz, under CAA, that there was a desire to keep the 3 of them together. If George came, that he would play with Russell and Randle, and obviously the Lakers had different thoughts, and that might have actually hurt their chances of getting George. In theory, maybe short term. Maybe it's for them. It might have been, okay, we're going to hurt ourselves short term, but we really don't want to be with, for whatever reason, we don't want to be with Russell, so we're going to put our foot down and not let an agent dictate how we're going to build our team, and you have to respect that to a degree. I know our listeners are very split on the Russell thing. Some are like, they made the biggest mistake in the world and they traded an all-star, and then I've got somebody emailing today saying it's factual that he wasn't any good. It's not subjective. I'm just saying it's subjective. I'm not saying he's good or bad. I'm just simply saying whether he is good or bad is subjective. And the Lakers are the only ones who really matter when it comes to that opinion, and we know what the answer was. So, but in the article that I've got coming out, or possibly out, depending on when you're listening, I talked about the math of the Lakers side of it, but I also kind of broke down the opposite end, because it's not just the Lakers, right? It's the 29 other teams that are going to be competing for the services of the 4 all-stars that I mentioned. And there's a reasonable chance, maybe not a high one, but I mean, certainly Russell Westbrook can take an extension that's on the table for over $200 million to stay in OKC. And it's possible he and Paul George find that they are perfect fits and Paul George decides to stick. Maybe Cleveland works out their nonsense and LeBron sticks, and maybe DeMarcus Cousins stays in New Orleans. So that's always a possibility. The other possibility is that they go to other teams. And if they're going to go to the Lakers, they can get to 2 max slots by letting Randall go. And then from what I understand, they are confident they can move Jordan Clarkson easily if they want to. So if they trade Jordan Clarkson, they're there. I think they would rather trade Luol Deng and then maybe even trade Clarkson too, and then have a decision on Randall and Casey, that get to that place. But that said, not a lot of the teams. I thought it would be more, but there aren't a lot of teams that are in the position to add 2 stars.
So who were the teams that you found actually were in that position?
Well,
or might be, I guess.
Well, there's a long list of teams that will have in the neighborhood of 29, 30, 35 million in cap room. And the Clippers could be one of them if DeAndre Jordan leaves and opts out, if Austin Rivers opts out and leaves, okay? So I had to include them on the list of just there's a good 8 or 9 teams, or maybe it's 7 teams that can have the cap space for one guy. But when you talk about 2, the Sixers can kind of get there, but the challenge is to get to 2 max, they need to let go of Joel Embiid, and that doesn't make sense to me. So now they can dump Okafor and get to the $40-something million range. But you need like $60 to $70 million. If you think about it, if you're going after Russell Westbrook and LeBron James, those guys are at the $35 million range. So you have to have $70 million in cap space, a little bit more, to get those 2 guys, right? If you're just going for, say, George and Cousins, those guys are at the $30 million mark. So you need about $60 million, right? So the range kind of fluctuates. So it could be 70, it could be 60. If you got one of the top tier and one of the bottom, then it's like 65 million. And there just aren't teams that have that kind of spending power. The Spurs, I thought might be able to get there. And I really thought that's what was going to shape up to be next summer, the Lakers versus the Spurs. But it ends up that they paid Pau Gasol a decent chunk of money. So now if they, in a year's time, get out of Pau Gasol and LaMarcus Aldridge leaves as a free agent, he can opt out. Let's say that happens. They can get there, but they have to get out of Pau Gasol, which maybe isn't that much harder than getting out of, say, Jordan Clarkson. So they could be in the mix, but the advantage that they have is that they have already that max guy there in Kawhi Leonard. They have a superstar there. So if one of them wants to come, they could easily make one happen. Can they make 2? It would be tricky, and a lot of it is predicated on LaMarcus Aldridge and his opt-out. So there are other teams. The Bulls are kind of in the mix a little bit, and the way they get in the mix is by Nikola Mirotic. If they don't re-sign him, or they re-sign him to a 1-year deal, they're definitely in the mix for 1. You figure they're going to want to keep Zach LaVine, who's got a cap hold that's not too high. If they can get out of Robin Lopez.
Mm-hmm.
If they can get out of Robin Lopez, they might be able to get into the mix, although it's not quite the range to get 2. So I thought there would be more teams, and sort of Pelinka's sell has been there. He's kind of said on radio or TV, I forget exactly where, that they're like the only team in that position. I don't necessarily agree with him that they're the only team, but I do think if they really can just evaporate Clarkson's money easily, and if that's accurate, they are right there, and they may be one of the few teams, and you can argue the only team that can get there. I don't know if I agree with them. I don't know if it's exactly true, but if 2 stars want to leave, you can argue the Lakers are financially in the best position to make that happen, with the asterisk, provided they can get rid of Clarkson easily without taking salary back.
It's interesting. I wonder then, in those situations, whether potential trade partners would make it harder on the Lakers, or they would ask for more, knowing what's at stake for them. I don't know how that would work as far as the negotiations are concerned, but I can imagine that if the Lakers are in that position and they are desperate to really clear that extra cap space to get that second star, that their trade partners could try to extract a little bit more.
Which is why I think, and you've talked about this, that getting out of Mozgov, where it's hard to move centers these days, and when it initially happened, I thought it was they sold low on Russell, but to the point of how hard it might be moving forward to get out of Deng. There aren't going to be a ton of teams with cap room. Maybe there'll be a dozen teams with cap room, of which Lakers are one.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got a bunch of teams that, like the Clippers, might not have cap room if they keep DeAndre if he stays. And then you start whittling it down. You might end up where there's just not a lot of teams that can do a lot, and that it's not the same as it's been the last few years where there's always some team you can shed salary to. So instead of being desperate to move Mozgov and Deng or Clarkson, right, now they can be in maybe a stronger position. The challenge will be moving off of Deng, and that's really the key to making it work elegantly. Like, it can work other ways, but to make it work elegantly, they need to get out of Deng, and that could cost something like, I don't know, a Kuzma, if he's as good as he looked in the Summer League, or if that's the case, maybe you move Nance, maybe you move Randall. I don't think Clarkson and Deng together, where that's like it's almost like $30 million in salary, right? Yeah. So basically, if you love Clarkson, you're going to pay $30 million a year to have him by taking on Deng. That seems a stretch to me. So there's Pincus seems confident the way he projects it. Magic, he just talks about how the Lakers are back and everything's great. So, I mean, if you believe them, they're set. But it's not about what they say. It's really about what they do, and that we have yet to see.
And the Lakers could stretch Luol Deng if they needed to.
True, but it doesn't quite get them. So trading Clarkson, stretching Deng, you still don't really have enough to pay Randall. You still don't really have enough to pay KCP or Lopez. So It's really getting him off entirely, because if he's owed was it $17 million, you can reduce it down to 3 or 4 in that range. So you might open up another $13, $14 million. So it's not nothing, but you're talking about paying those guys $13, $14 million. And so it might help them keep Randall. It's tight. It's not exact, but they might be able to keep Randall. They might be able to keep Clarkson by stretching Deng, but the numbers don't work as well as you'd like, and it becomes a question of where does the cap fall, because the Celtics were in a very similar boat where they had a very specific plan that included keeping Avery Bradley, and then the cap last minute dropped from 101 to 99, and that meant they had to lose Bradley. So the Lakers are kind of tight, whereas the earlier and the better. The earlier the better. The sooner they can get out of Luol Deng, the better position they are. So Josh, what is it about the Clippers and breaking hands on people's faces?
I don't know if it's officially a pattern, but Danilo Gallinari is now in that club. He was playing in Eurobasket with Italy against the Netherlands, and he got in a little bit of a kerfuffle with one of the Dutch players, and he threw a punch with his right hand, and it fractured his right hand.
It was a nice punch. I mean, from a pugilistic sense, it was a hook, I think.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's better than what you usually see out of NBA players, especially nowadays.
That was a solid punch.
But it still goes to show you that NBA players their bodies are not made for fighting, because anytime there's that sort of action with their fists, it just results in an injury. In this case, it looks like Gallinari has a thumb injury, a fracture in there. He's going to be evaluated by team doctors, by Clippers team doctors at some point soon. He's apologized in Italian. He said his teammates didn't deserve this. Now he's got to keep his hand steady for a while and stay home. Then when the rehab ends, he'll head back to LA. So it sounded like something in the 4 to 6 week range.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. I've heard it's a typical fracture. It's not one, at least at the initial diagnosis. From what I've heard, there's no surgery, but I don't want to say that and say, and then surgery, because like you said, maybe the Clippers doctors haven't looked at it yet. But the initial expectation is it's just like a typical fracture, which takes 4 to 6 weeks, and that's that, and you come back and you're fine. So it's not like you need to have he doesn't have to have pins or anything like that.
And that should put him back on the court and ready to go in time for training camp.
Which is important.
Yes, huge, considering where the Clippers are at, what they're trying to do with their team, how they're trying to figure out the way to play without Chris Paul, with Blake Griffin and Gallinari as sort of your top.
This is an important
top scorer, playmaker type guys. Yeah, it's critical. So the news was it wasn't good news. It was definitely not flattering news for the Clippers, but it could have been a lot worse.
True,
given the timing. So we'll see what happens with Gallo. But it's certainly for those Clipper fans and just basketball folks in particular who were concerned about Gallo's ability to stay healthy just over the course of his career. We've not really seen it. this certainly doesn't add to whatever confidence they may or may not have had towards the thought of Gallo playing a full healthy season with the Clippers.
Well, hopefully this will be his one injury as a Clipper this whole season. So let's put that out there. And then the last topic we're going to touch on. Yes, the Lakers are probably going to sign Vanderblue. That's what the report was, and I'm happy because Vanderblue has been in their system. He came up for a couple of days at the end of a few years back, finished out the season, I think, when there were injuries, and then he's been in with the D League, which at the time it was the D League, right?
It's the G League,
yeah,
right?
But he was with the D League with the Defenders, who are now the South Bay Lakers with the G League. But I don't know if he's going to make the team. But really, all he really wants, and I've spoken to him multiple times, is he just wants that shot, and he feels like he's earned it. And I agree with him that he has earned it, and I think it's the right thing for the Lakers to do, is to reward a player who has put in the kind of years that he's put in their system to just give him that shot to make the team. And I thought he played great over the summer in Summer League. The first game, he was outgunning, but the team was still trying to figure out who they were. And then by the time they got to the championship, I mean, Vanderblue was dishing some pretty nice assists. I thought the Lonzo effect sort of started to – and it seems funny, but sometimes you just need a player who can score. There are times where teams just die out there, where sometimes they just can't get anything going. And Blue he is a scorer through and through. He can do other things. He's not necessarily great at other things. If he's great at something, I think he can be a very good scorer, even at the NBA level. I think if you gave him a starting role on a bad team, he'd average like 18, 20 a game. In the NBA, I really think he can do that. I don't know if the team would win a lot, but I do think he's someone who can really put up numbers even at the NBA level. The question is can he fit into something more? And that's what we're going to see. You never know.
Yeah, and I guess now that David Nwaba is gone, he's in Chicago now, if I'm not mistaken. Now that there is sort of a need, for, if you will, for the Lakers to see if there's someone coming out of their G League team to contribute.
I don't know where the minutes are because you've got, of course, you've got KCP, you've got Jordan Clarkson, you've got Lonzo, you've got Josh Hart, you've got Tyler Ennis, all at the guard. Ingram may play some guard. And technically, you also have Alex Caruso, who is the hero of that one game, who is on a two-way contract. So we've talked about the Drew League. We've talked about we even talked a tiny bit indirectly about my girls' team, sort of. But the one thing we got to touch on is Yu Darvish. That's kind of a big deal. Now, we're Hollywood Hoops, but the Dodgers have been the best team in baseball this year, by a sizable margin. They're pretty darn good. And
easily the best team in Los Angeles of any pro sports team by a pretty wide margin as well. So, it's exciting. It's this time of year when I really start flipping on my Spectrum Sportsnet or whatever channel they're on, Spectrum LA, and because there's no basketball on, and here's baseball, and the Dodgers are a million games ahead of everybody right now, and this is really the first, not the first time they've had a good team, but the first time it's really looked like this is the year.
Right.
Like the Dodgers haven't won a World Series, haven't been to the World Series since I've been alive. They last won the World Series, I want to say it was like a week or two before I was born, because I was born late October of 88. And I think they probably won it
I have some years on you.
Yeah, so you remember the Kirk Gibson home run and all that. For me, it's just highlights. So I think in Yu Darvish, now the Dodgers, this is like their shot. Shows they're going for it. They need another frontline starting pitcher. They get it to go along with Clayton Kershaw, who's out right now, and Alex Wood, who's had a really good season for them. So
yeah, they just need to get, obviously, Kershaw back healthy. Now, Darvish has been good, not elite this year. Mm-hmm. A couple years back, he had Tommy John surgery, and that's something that you can obviously come back from and be a very special pitcher from, but it's a journey. And so I think that there's him being, if he's the third guy in that rotation, I think that's the right spot. I think it's not as much pressure. Doesn't have to be their ace. Mm-hmm. And he's on a winning organization, an organization that will give him a lot of run support. And so I'm excited to see it. My wife and I, our first date was a Dodger game. Oh. Yes, I've always been a baseball. I was actually a baseball fan first before I was a basketball fan. I grew up a Mets fan because I'm originally from New York, and so Around 86, that was like the peak, and the Mets won. You had Billy Buckner, the ball through his legs, Mookie Wilson, all that. And that was just like incredible. I remember I was in LA, but I was watching and losing my mind when that happened. And then it ends up they were all on drugs, and there was all this cocaine scandals. And then
sports in the 80s, pro sports in the 80s.
And then you had like at that point, it was like in 88, the Dodgers came around. I was like, all right, due to all of the off the court, Strawberry and Gooden, they had all these kind of problems and all the kind of stuff. At some point, I said, all right, I'll make the conversion. I stuck by the Mets when they were like 6th, and when they were 7th, they don't even have 7th place anymore, right? When they were 7th every year, because they realigned at some point. So,
right.
And then at some point I took on the Dodgers. So yeah, it was Dorothy and I, our first date a long time ago. So I'm excited for the Dodgers. I don't have to root for. We can't root for basketball teams, right? But I can root for a little bit of baseball.
I think we can. And I think it's a good time. Good time for LA baseball. Thank goodness for that. But it's been another fascinating, wide-ranging edition of Hollywood Hoops. We're going to call it quits here. Thanks again for tuning in, everybody. Joining Eric Pincus, you can find at Basketball Insiders and Bleacher Report on social media at Eric Pincus, EricPincus. I'm Josh Martin of Bleacher Report and Clippers.com. Find me on social media at Josh Martin NBA. You can find Hollywood Hoops on social media at Hollywood_hoops. Find our podcast at almightyballer.com, on iTunes, Google Music, Stitcher, the works. Look us up, and we look forward to entertaining you with another great hour of podcast soon. Thanks again.
He's on his way, he's going to Hollywood, he's busting into Hollywood. What you doing? Show him the way, he's moving to Hollywood, he's hopping into Hollywood.